The champagne flute hit the marble floor at 9:47 in the morning, and that single sound changed everything. "Clean it up," the woman said, not even looking down. "That's literally your job." Maya Carter knelt without a word, gathering shards of crystal with bare hands while a man in a $1,000 suit filmed her on his phone, laughing. "Post this," he told his wife. "Caption it, room service with attitude." What none of them knew, what nobody in that gleaming lobby of the Wilshire Grand Hotel knew, was that 18 hours earlier, in a quiet law office 4 blocks away, Maya Carter had signed her name on the final page of a stack of documents 3 inches thick. Documents that made her the sole owner of this hotel. Every marble tile. Every gold-trimmed elevator. Every paycheck, including the one that would, in exactly 9 days, belong to the man currently filming her on the floor. She said nothing. She never did. 11 years of pushing a cleaning cart down these halls had taught her that silence was armor, and patience was a weapon sharper than any insult thrown her way. But today was different. Today, somewhere in a back office, a phone call was about to be made. And once that call went through, nothing in this hotel would ever be the same again. What happened next would humble a family who thought their money made them untouchable. Maya Carter had been invisible for so long that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., she parked her 12-year-old Honda in the employee lot behind the Wilshire Grand, 3 full blocks from the entrance guests used. She'd walk past the loading dock, past the kitchen exhaust fans breathing steam into the cold air, and clock in at a timecard machine that didn't care who she really was. By 6 o'clock, she was in gray. Gray polo, gray slacks, name tag that simply read Maya. No last name. Guests didn't need her last name. She'd started here at 26, fresh off a divorce that had taken her apartment and most of her dignity with it. 11 years later, she was 37, and the Wilshire Grand had become something strange to her, not quite a home, but the only place where she understood every crack in the marble, every guest who tipped well and every guest who treated her like she was part of the furniture. What none of the wealthy guests gliding through that lobby ever considered was the woman behind the cart. They saw gray fabric and lowered eyes and assumed that was the whole story. It wasn't. Maya had grown up in Detroit, in a 2-bedroom house with 5 siblings and a mother who cleaned 3 other people's houses to keep the lights on in their own. Her mother used to say, "Baby, the people who look down on you are usually standing on something they didn't build themselves." Maya hadn't understood it then. She understood it now, every single day, pushing a cart through hallways paid for by men who'd never scrubbed a toilet in their lives. But Maya had a secret her mother never lived to see come true. While she worked days at the hotel, she'd spent nights, for nearly a decade, building something else entirely. A logistics and real estate holding company, started with $800 and a library card, grown quietly through smart land purchases in cities nobody else wanted to touch. By the time she was 34, Maya Carter Holdings was worth more than most people could imagine. She told no one at the hotel. Not her manager, not her coworkers, not even her closest friend on the housekeeping staff, Denise. Why hide it? Because Maya had learned, painfully, what happened when people discovered you had money. They changed. They wanted things. They smiled differently. She'd rather be invisible and real than visible and surrounded by people pretending to like her. So she kept cleaning rooms. And she kept building, quietly, in the dark, the way her mother had taught her to do everything that mattered. 11 years of saving, investing, and reinvesting had led her here, to a Tuesday morning in March, sitting across from a lawyer named Gerald Okafor, signing the final document that made her the new owner of the Wilshire Grand Hotel Group. She'd bought it for one reason that she told no one, not even Gerald. She wanted to walk back into that lobby, one more time, as herself. But she wasn't ready yet. The deal hadn't closed publicly. The staff didn't know. The board didn't know. Only her lawyer, her accountant, and the seller's attorneys knew that ownership had transferred. Maya had asked for 9 days before the announcement, 9 days to finish one last week as Maya the housekeeper before she became Maya Carter, hotel owner, in front of the entire world. She thought she'd have a quiet 9 days. She had no idea the Prestons were checking in that afternoon. Richard Preston walked into the Wilshire Grand the way he walked into every room, like the building owed him something. He was 54, silver-haired, dressed in a navy suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Behind him trailed his wife, Vanessa, in sunglasses despite the dim lobby lighting, and their son, Tyler, 23, scrolling his phone and barely glancing up. The Prestons were old money, real estate, mostly, inherited 3 generations back, multiplied through luck and aggressive lawyers. "Penthouse suite, Preston," Richard announced to the front desk clerk, not as a request but as a statement of fact. "Of course, Mr. Preston." "Welcome back," the clerk said, fingers flying across the keyboard. Richard didn't acknowledge the welcome. His eyes had already moved past the desk, scanning the lobby the way he scanned every space he entered, looking for what was beneath him. That was when he saw Maya. She was kneeling near a planter by the elevator bank, carefully wiping a smudge off the brass trim, her cart parked a few feet away with neatly folded towels and spray bottles arranged in rows. She didn't look up. She never looked up first. 11 years had taught her that eye contact with certain guests invited conversation she didn't want. "You," Richard said, snapping his fingers like he was calling a dog. "Is the penthouse suite ready? Last time we were here, there was a hair in the bathtub." "A hair? Do you understand how unacceptable that is?" Maya stood slowly, smoothing her uniform. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't handle the penthouse directly, but I can call housekeeping management to confirm it's." "I don't want a phone call," Richard interrupted. "I want it confirmed by someone who actually checked." "Can you do that, or is that too complicated?" Vanessa Preston let out a small laugh behind her sunglasses, the kind of laugh designed to be heard. Maya kept her voice level. "I'll find out for you right now, sir." "Good," Richard said. "Try not to take all day. Some of us have actual schedules to keep." What none of the Prestons noticed, what none of them could have noticed, was the flicker in Maya's eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Something closer to quiet recognition. She'd met men like Richard Preston 100 times in this lobby. Men who measured their own importance by how small they could make someone else feel. She walked away to make the call, and Richard turned to his wife with a satisfied smirk. "Some of these people," he muttered, "you'd think they'd be grateful just to work somewhere like this." But that smirk wouldn't last. Because in 9 days, the woman he'd just snapped his fingers at would be the one deciding whether the Prestons ever set foot in this hotel again. Nobody in that lobby knew it yet. But the countdown had already begun. The trouble started over something small. It almost always did. 2 days into their stay, the Preston suite had a billing error, a charge for a bottle of champagne from the minibar that Vanessa swore she never opened. It was a $40 mistake, the kind hotels fixed a dozen times a day without drama. Vanessa Preston turned it into a crisis. She marched down to the lobby at 9:40 that morning, heels clicking against marble, demanding to see a manager. The front desk clerk, a nervous young man named Theo, tried to explain that billing adjustments needed to go through the accounting office, which opened at 10. "I don't care when accounting opens," Vanessa snapped. "I want this fixed now." That's when Maya, pushing her cart past the front desk on her way to restock the second floor, made the mistake of being visible at the wrong moment. "Excuse me," Vanessa said, turning toward her instead, voice rising. "You. Housekeeping. Do you know anything about why we're being charged for things we didn't order?" Maya stopped, hands on the cart handle. "I'm sorry, ma'am, that's not something I'd." "Of course it's not," Vanessa cut in, sharper now. "None of you ever know anything, do you? You just push your little carts around and collect a paycheck while actual problems happen around you." Richard appeared beside his wife, drawn by the rising volume, and saw an opportunity to perform for the small audience gathering near the concierge desk. Is this the same woman who couldn't confirm our room status the other day? He asked loudly. Honestly, Vanessa, I don't know how this place keeps people like this on staff. Sir, Maya said quietly, I really am happy to find someone from the front office who can. We don't want someone, Richard said, stepping closer, his voice carrying across the lobby now. We want this handled. But I suppose that's asking too much from the cleaning staff. A woman near the lounge area lowered her newspaper to watch. A bellhop froze mid-stride with a luggage cart. Tyler Preston, slouched on a lobby sofa, finally looked up from his phone, grinning at the scene like it was entertainment made just for him. Mom's right, he called out. These people don't get it unless you spell it out. Maya felt the heat rise in her chest, not embarrassment, but something colder. Controlled. She had 11 years of practice keeping her face still while people like the Prestons performed their cruelty in public, and she used every bit of that practice now. I understand you're frustrated, she said evenly. Let me get someone who can resolve the billing issue directly. No, Richard said, holding up a hand. What I want is for you to understand something. People like you exist to make our stay comfortable. That's the entire function. So when something isn't comfortable, that's a failure. Your failure. The lobby had gone quiet enough that his words landed on every ear in the room. What none of them knew, what made the moment almost unbearable in its irony, was that within the week, Richard Preston would be standing in this same lobby, finding out exactly who decided whether anyone's stay at the Wilshire Grand was comfortable ever again. But that reveal was still days away. For now, Maya simply nodded, turned, and walked toward the back office to find someone from billing. She thought that was the end of it. She was wrong. It was only the beginning. Denise Walker had worked beside Maya for 6 years, long enough to know her moods better than most people knew their own siblings. In the break room that afternoon, Denise found Maya sitting at the small round table, hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. You okay? Denise asked, sliding into the chair across from her. Heard what happened in the lobby. Theo told me. Sounded ugly. Maya shrugged. I've had worse. That doesn't mean it doesn't count, Denise said. You don't have to pretend it rolls off you every time. Maya looked up, and for a moment, something almost slipped through, a tiredness that went deeper than one bad morning. It's not about pretending, she said quietly. It's about choosing when to react. Denise studied her for a second. You always say things like that. Like you're playing some longer game nobody else can see. Maya offered a small, unreadable smile. Maybe I am. She didn't elaborate, and Denise didn't push. That was the rhythm of their friendship, built on respecting the parts of each other that stayed private. But Denise couldn't shake the feeling, not for the first time, that there was more to Maya Carter than gray uniforms and quiet patience. What Denise didn't know was how close she'd come to the truth. Later that day, Maya excused herself for a doctor's appointment, a lie she'd used twice before in the past week. She drove not to a clinic, but to the downtown office of Okafor and Lynn Legal Group, where Gerald Okafor was waiting with a folder of finalized paperwork and a serious expression. The board chair wants to move the announcement up, Gerald said, sliding the folder across his desk. There's pressure from the press. Word is starting to leak that ownership changed hands. If we don't announce on our terms, someone else will announce it on theirs. Maya's stomach tightened. How much time do I have? 5 days. Maybe less. 5 days. Maya had wanted 9. She'd wanted 1 full week as herself before the world found out who she really was. But the world, it seemed, didn't care what Maya wanted. There's something else, Gerald added, more carefully now. The Preston family. Richard Preston specifically. He's been making calls to board members he knows personally, trying to get information about the sale before it's public. He suspects something's happening and wants to be ahead of it. Maya's jaw tightened. Of course he did. Men like Richard Preston always wanted to be ahead of everything, except, apparently, basic decency. Let him make his calls, Maya said. He won't find anything he isn't supposed to find. But as she drove back to the hotel that evening, gray uniform folded in the back seat, Maya couldn't shake a small, uneasy feeling. The walls were about to come down faster than she'd planned. And she wasn't sure yet whether that was a blessing or a disaster waiting to happen. Richard Preston was not a man who tolerated mysteries, especially ones involving his money. He'd heard whispers, an associate at his country club mentioning that the Wilshire Grand Hotel Group had quietly changed ownership, that the deal had moved through private channels instead of a public sale. Richard had significant investments tied to hospitality real estate, and the idea that a major property had shifted hands without his knowledge irritated him more than he wanted to admit. So he started digging. He called his lawyer first. "I want to know who owns the Wilshire Grand," he said. "Find the paperwork. Find the registration. I don't care what it costs." His lawyer came back 2 days later with frustratingly little. The deal was structured through a private holding entity, he explained. Maya Carter Holdings LLC. Beyond that, the ownership details are sealed pending public announcement. Maya Carter, Richard repeated slowly, the name meaning nothing to him. Never heard of her. Some investment group, probably. Find out who's behind it. What Richard didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined in his wildest calculations, was that the answer to his question was currently 3 floors above him, replacing toilet paper rolls in room 412. Meanwhile, Tyler Preston, bored and looking for entertainment, had taken to needling staff for fun. He cornered a young valet outside the hotel, demanding his car be brought around faster than last time, then filmed the valet's nervous apology on his phone for his social media followers, captioning it, "Service standards dropping at the Wilshire LOL." The video got attention, but not the kind Tyler wanted. Comments rolled in criticizing his behavior, calling him entitled, calling out the casual cruelty of someone clearly born into comfort he hadn't earned. Tyler deleted the post within the hour, irritated but unbothered. People like him rarely learned from backlash. They simply waited for it to pass. But what he didn't realize was that one screenshot of that video had already been saved, and forwarded to someone inside the hotel's new ownership structure, someone compiling a quiet record of guest behavior during the transition period. Maya never asked for the screenshot. She didn't need to. The pattern of Preston family behavior had become impossible to ignore, documented across dozens of staff complaints that had been quietly piling up in HR files for over a year, complaints that, until now, no one in management had taken seriously, because the Prestons were valuable guests. That was about to change. That evening, Maya sat alone in her small apartment, scrolling through an HR report Gerald had forwarded at her request, a full history of guest complaints against Richard, Vanessa, and Tyler Preston. Comments about staff being beneath them. A formal complaint from a server who'd been screamed at over a wine selection. Another from a bellhop accused, falsely, of stealing, an accusation that turned out to be Vanessa misplacing her own jewelry. Pattern after pattern of entitlement dressed up as standards. Maya closed her laptop slowly, jaw tight. She thought she understood the full picture. She had no idea the worst incident was still ahead of her, and that it would happen in front of the entire lobby, with her standing directly in the middle of it. For 2 days, things seemed to calm down. The billing error got resolved. Vanessa received an apology and a complimentary spa credit, which seemed to soothe her temporarily. Richard, distracted by his investigation into the hotel's new ownership, stopped harassing staff directly, delegating his frustration instead to phone calls with lawyers and old business contacts. Maya allowed herself, briefly, to believe the storm had passed. She even let herself imagine the upcoming announcement with something close to excitement instead of dread. 5 days had become 3. Gerald had confirmed the press release was finalized, a quiet but firm statement announcing Maya Carter as the new owner of the Wilshire Grand Hotel Group, along with her vision for fair wages, transparent management, and people-first hospitality. She thought about Denise. About Theo at the front desk. About the dozens of staff members who'd shown her kindness over 11 years, never knowing what she was building in the dark. She imagined walking into the lobby, not in gray, but as herself, and watching their faces shift from confusion to disbelief to something like pride. For one evening, sitting on her small balcony with a cup of tea, Maya let herself feel something close to peace. She thought the hardest part was behind her. She had absolutely no idea how wrong she was. The next morning, everything fell apart in less than 10 minutes. It started with the champagne flute. A server delivering room service to the Preston suite had bumped the cart while passing Maya in the hallway, sending a celebratory bottle and 2 flutes crashing toward the floor. Maya, instinctively, reached out to steady the cart, and in doing so, accidentally knocked one flute completely off the edge, where it shattered against the marble. It was an accident. A genuine, unavoidable accident, the kind that happens a dozen times a day in any hotel. Richard Preston, stepping out of his suite at that exact moment, saw only the broken glass and Maya standing near it. "Are you serious?" he said, voice rising instantly. "You break our champagne now? This is the kind of carelessness I'm talking about." "Sir, it was an accident, the cart was bumped." "I don't care whose cart did what," Richard snapped. "Clean it up. Now." Maya knelt immediately, gathering the shards with careful hands, ignoring the small sting as a piece nicked her palm. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, drawn by the noise, and rather than de-escalating, she added fuel to the fire. "Honestly, Richard, this is exactly why I said this hotel has gone downhill. They hire anyone these days." Tyler, phone already in hand from the noise, lifted it to record. "This is too good," he muttered, grinning, already imagining the views. "Sir, please don't film me," Maya said quietly, still kneeling. "Why?" Tyler said, smirking. "Embarrassed? Should have been more careful, then." The small crowd that had gathered, 2 business travelers near the elevator, a hotel guest waiting for valet, watched in uncomfortable silence. No one intervened. That was the quiet tragedy of moments like this, cruelty performed in public, and a room full of people too uncertain, too uncomfortable, or too indifferent to say anything. Richard crouched slightly, lowering his voice into something almost worse than shouting, cold, deliberate. "Let me explain something to you, since you clearly don't understand it. This hotel exists because people like my family spend money here. You exist because hotels need people to clean up after us. That's the entire relationship. Don't ever forget which side of that equation you're on." Maya's hand stilled for just a moment over the broken glass. She thought of her mother. Of the bus rides to 3 different cleaning jobs. Of every man who'd ever looked at a woman in a uniform and decided that uniform defined her entirely. She looked up at Richard Preston, and for the first time in this entire encounter, she let him see her eyes fully. "I understand the relationship perfectly," she said, voice calm, almost gentle. "Better than you do, actually." Richard blinked, caught off guard by the steadiness in her tone. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," Maya said, standing, glass shards collected in a cloth. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Preston." She walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing in the hallway with an unfamiliar, unsettled feeling he couldn't quite name. What Richard didn't know was that Tyler's video, recorded in full, complete with his own mocking commentary, had already been uploaded, and within hours, it would reach far more people than he ever intended. Including someone on the hotel's incoming executive board, who recognized the woman on the floor immediately. And called Gerald Okafor in a panic. Gerald Okafor's phone rang at 11:50 that morning, and the voice on the other end was not calm. "Gerald, I need you to tell me this is some kind of mistake," said Howard Lynn, senior partner and longtime advisor to the hotel's incoming board. "There's a video circulating, some kid filming hotel staff, mocking a housekeeper while she cleans broken glass off the floor. Gerald, that housekeeper is Maya Carter." Gerald's stomach dropped. "Where did you see this?" "It's spreading." Slowly, but spreading. Someone recognized her from the closing documents photo, the one filed with the county registry. Gerald, if this gets connected publicly before the announcement, this isn't just embarrassing. This is a story. Billionaire owner mocked in her own hotel, and nobody knew. The press will tear into this. Gerald closed his eyes briefly. I need to call her. He dialed Maya's cell immediately. She answered on the second ring, voice steady despite the chaos Gerald could hear simmering underneath it. Maya, there's a video, Gerald said carefully. Tyler Preston filmed the incident with the champagne glass. It's online. Someone connected it to you. There was a long pause on the line. How bad? Maya finally asked. Bad enough that we can't wait until the planned date, Gerald said. Maya, I think we need to move the announcement up. Today. Maybe within the next few hours, before this spirals into something we can't control. Maya looked down at her hands, small cuts still stinging from the glass, gray uniform stained slightly at the knees from kneeling on hotel floors that, legally, had belonged to her for over a week now. She thought about waiting 9 days to feel like herself one last time. She thought about her mother's voice. The people who look down on you are usually standing on something they didn't build. Okay, Maya said quietly. Let's do it today. What she didn't tell Gerald, what she barely admitted to herself, was that some small, fierce part of her wasn't dreading this moment anymore. She was ready for it. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, the lobby of the Wilshire Grand was unusually full. Word had leaked through the staff first, whispers passing from housekeeping to the front desk to the kitchen, growing louder, more disbelieving with every repetition. Maya bought the hotel. Maya Carter. Our Maya. Denise heard it from Theo and laughed out loud before realizing he wasn't joking. The Prestons, oblivious, were preparing for an early dinner reservation when hotel security quietly asked them to come down to the lobby for what was described as an important update regarding hotel management. Richard, irritated but curious, agreed, dragging Vanessa and Tyler along. When they stepped off the elevator, the lobby was filled, not just with curious guests, but with staff. Dozens of them, gathered near the front desk, phones in pockets, eyes fixed on a woman standing near the concierge station. Maya Carter stood there in a charcoal suit, hair down instead of pulled back, the gray uniform nowhere in sight. Beside her stood Gerald Okafor and 2 members of the hotel's executive board. Richard's steps slowed. Something about the woman's posture, the way the room had arranged itself around her, sent an uneasy ripple through him before his brain even processed who she was. Mr. Preston, Gerald said, voice carrying clearly across the lobby. I'd like to formally introduce you to Maya Carter, the new owner of the Wilshire Grand Hotel Group. For a moment, Richard simply stared, waiting for the punchline. Then recognition hit him like cold water. You're, Vanessa started, sunglasses finally off, voice faltering. You're the housekeeper. I was your housekeeper, Maya said calmly. I'm also, as of 9 days ago, your landlord. The lobby went utterly silent. Even the soft hotel music seemed to fade beneath the weight of the moment. Tyler, phone still in his pocket for once, looked genuinely pale. This has to be some kind of joke. It's not, Maya said, stepping closer, her voice steady but carrying clearly. I've worked in this hotel for 11 years. I've cleaned rooms, scrubbed floors, picked up broken glass off marble that I now legally own. I've listened to thousands of guests, most of them kind, some of them cruel. I remember every kindness. I also remember every cruelty. She looked directly at Richard. You told me, 2 days ago, that I exist to make your stay comfortable, and that any discomfort was my failure. Let me correct that for you, in front of everyone here. Richard's mouth opened, but no sound came out. My failure, Maya continued, was staying silent for as long as I did. Not because I was weak, but because I chose to watch. I wanted to understand exactly what kind of guests this hotel had been attracting, and exactly what kind of behavior had been quietly tolerated for years because certain families spent enough money to be excused for cruelty. She turned slightly toward the gathered staff. I've spoken to HR. I've read the complaints filed against your family over the past 3 years. The yelling. The false accusations. The video your son posted mocking a member of my staff, filmed, ironically, while I was the one kneeling on the floor. Vanessa's face had gone white. Tyler looked like he wanted the marble floor to swallow him whole. Effective today, Maya said, the Preston family's reservation privileges at every property under Maya Carter Holdings are revoked, indefinitely. You can't be serious, Richard said, finally finding his voice, though it had lost all its earlier authority. Do you understand who I am? What I'm worth? I know exactly who you are, Maya said quietly. You're a man who looked at a woman in a uniform and decided her worth ended at her job title. You're a man who taught his son that cruelty is entertainment as long as the person on the receiving end can't fight back. She paused, letting the words settle. The problem, Mr. Preston, is that I could fight back. I always could. I simply chose not to, until you made it impossible to stay silent. The lobby remained still, dozens of eyes moving between Maya's composed face and Richard's collapsing confidence. Security will assist you with checkout, Maya added, voice softening only slightly. Your bill, including the champagne you broke, through no fault of my staff, has been waived. Consider it the last kindness this hotel extends to your family. The Prestons left the Wilshire Grand within the hour, trailed by hushed conversations and more than a few phones recording their exit, an ironic mirror of the video Tyler had once filmed so casually. News of the encounter spread fast, first through hotel staff group chats, then through local press, who'd already been circling the story of the hotel's ownership change. By evening, Housekeeper-Billionaire confronts entitled guests was trending, accompanied by clips of Maya's calm, devastating response in the lobby. But for Maya, the real payoff wasn't public vindication. It was smaller, quieter, and far more meaningful. It was Denise, finding her in the back office that evening, eyes wide with disbelief. 11 years, Denise said softly. 11 years, and you never said a word. I needed to know who people really were, Maya said. Including myself. It was Theo, the nervous front desk clerk, asking timidly the next morning whether his job was safe, and Maya assuring him that nothing about his position would change, except, perhaps, his pay, which she planned to raise across the board for every staff member who'd spent years being underestimated and underpaid. It was the small, quiet announcement she made to her staff a week later: full benefits, fair scheduling, a formal zero-tolerance policy for guest mistreatment of employees, enforced from the top down by someone who finally understood exactly what that mistreatment felt like. Richard Preston, for his part, found his name quietly removed from hospitality circles that mattered, word spreading among hotel groups about exactly why the Preston family was no longer welcome at several prestigious properties. Some kinds of justice didn't require courtrooms. Sometimes, they simply required the truth finally reaching the right ears.